Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he pushed the cleaning cart down the long corridor of New Horizon Station. The wheels squeaked against the metal floor, making an annoying sound that echoed through the empty hallway. He had been working the night shift for 3 months now, and he still wasn't used to how quiet the station became after most people went to sleep. New Horizon was huge. It floated in space near a bright blue star, far from Earth. The station was built like a giant wheel that spun slowly to make fake gravity. Jake worked in the alien quarters section, where visitors from other worlds stayed when they came to trade or talk with humans. The job wasn't exciting, but Jake didn't mind. He liked the peace and quiet of working alone. During the day, the station buzzed with activity. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked the halls, making deals and sharing knowledge. But at night, it was just Jake and his cleaning supplies. He stopped at Corridor 7 and checked his work tablet. The list showed he needed to clean the walls and floors here. Some kind of green slime had been reported near the air vents. Jake had seen worse things in his 3 months on the job. Last week, he had to clean up purple goo that smelled like rotten eggs. Jake set up his equipment and turned on the sonic cleaner. The machine hummed loudly as it sent sound waves through the walls to break up dirt and stains. He had learned to wear ear protection after his first day left his ears ringing for hours. As he worked, Jake heard footsteps behind him. He turned and saw one of the aliens walking down the hall. She was tall and moved with smooth, careful steps. Her skin had a silver blue color that seemed to glow softly under the hall lights. She wore what looked like armor, but it was different from anything Jake had seen before. The metal seemed to move and shift like it was alive. Jake knew she was Valthari. He had seen a few of them around the station, but they usually kept to themselves. This one looked young, maybe around his age if he had to guess. Her armor covered most of her body, but he could see her face. She had large eyes that glowed with a soft white light. The alien girl noticed Jake watching her and gave a small nod. Jake nodded back and went back to his work. He didn't want to stare and make her uncomfortable. The alien relations people had given all the workers training about being respectful to visitors from other worlds. Jake moved his equipment closer to the wall where the green slime was thickest. He turned up the power on the sonic cleaner and aimed it at the worst spots. The slime started to bubble and break apart, which was a good sign. Behind him, he heard the alien girl stop walking. Jake glanced over his shoulder and saw her looking at something on her armor. She seemed worried about something, touching a spot on her chest plate where the metal looked different from the rest. Jake was about to ask if she needed help when he heard a loud crack from inside the wall. He had heard that sound before. It meant a cleaning pipe was about to break. "Oh no," Jake said under his breath. He quickly turned off the sonic cleaner and stepped back from the wall. The crack got louder. Jake looked around for an emergency shut-off switch, but before he could find one, the wall burst open. A spray of bright blue cleaning solution shot out like water from a broken fire hose. The liquid hit Jake first, soaking his work clothes and making him stumble backward. But the spray was wide, and some of it hit the alien girl who was standing nearby. Jake watched in horror as the cleaning solution splashed across her armor. Where the liquid touched the metal, it started to smoke and bubble. The armor began to dissolve, especially around her chest where she had been touching it earlier. "No, no, no," Jake shouted. He knew the cleaning solution was strong enough to eat through metal, but he had never seen it work so fast. The alien girl stood frozen, watching her armor dissolve. She didn't scream or run. She just stared down at her chest where the metal was disappearing. Jake grabbed the emergency water hose from the wall and ran toward her. "Hold still," he called out. "I need to wash that off before it hurts you." He turned the hose on full power and sprayed clean water all over the alien girl. The water washed away the blue cleaning solution and stopped the armor from dissolving further. Jake made sure to rinse every spot where the chemical had touched, paying special attention to her chest area where the damage looked worse. When he was sure all the cleaning solution was gone, Jake turned off the water. Both of them were soaking, wet and breathing hard. The alien girl's armor was damaged but not completely destroyed. Some pieces were missing, and other parts looked thin and weak. "Are you hurt?" Jake asked, stepping closer to check for injuries. "Did any of the chemical get on your skin?" The alien girl didn't answer right away. She looked down at her wet, damaged armor, then up at Jake. Her glowing eyes were wide with an expression Jake couldn't read. She seemed shocked, but not in the way he expected. "Human," she said slowly. Her voice was soft and musical, with an accent Jake had never heard before. "Do you know what that means?" Jake blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I was just trying to help. That cleaning solution could have hurt you if I didn't wash it off." The alien girl continued to stare at him. She raised one hand and touched the wet armor on her chest where Jake had sprayed the most water. Her fingers trembled slightly. "You rinsed my armor," she whispered. "Well, yeah," Jake said. "I had to get that chemical off before it did more damage." "Are you okay? Should I call the medical team?" The alien girl took a step backward. Her eyes never left Jake's face. She looked like someone who had just seen something impossible. I must go," she said quietly. Before Jake could say anything else, the alien girl turned and walked quickly down the hall. Her wet footsteps echoed as she moved away from him. Jake watched her until she disappeared around a corner. Jake stood alone in the flooded hallway, surrounded by his scattered cleaning equipment. Water dripped from his clothes and hair. He looked at the broken wall where the pipe had burst, then in the direction where the alien girl had gone. What just happened? He asked himself. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness had just changed everything. Jake couldn't sleep. He lay in his small room on the station, staring at the ceiling and thinking about what had happened with the alien girl. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face and the strange way she had looked at him after he rinsed. Her armor. He kept replaying her words in his mind. Do you know what that means? What could rinsing armor possibly mean to her people? Jake had learned basic facts about different alien species during his training, but nobody had mentioned anything about armor being special. After tossing and turning for 2 hours, Jake gave up on sleep. He got dressed and decided to find someone who could explain what had happened. The station never really slept, so there were always people working even during the night shift. Jake made his way to the science section of the station. Dr. Amy Collins worked there as a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life forms. More importantly, she served as a cultural liaison between humans and the various alien species that visited the station. If anyone could explain the alien girl's reaction, it would be Dr. Collins. Jake found her in her office, reading reports. On her computer screen, she was a woman in her 40s, with short brown hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She looked up when Jake knocked on her open door. "Jake Morrison, right?" she said with a smile. "You work in maintenance. What brings you here so late?" Jake stepped into the office and closed the door behind him. "Dr. Collins, I need to ask you about the Velthari. Something happened tonight, and I think I might have made a mistake." "Doctor." Collins's expression became more serious. She gestured for Jake to sit in the chair across from her desk. "Tell me what happened." Jake explained everything from the beginning. He told her about the broken pipe, the cleaning solution, and how he had rinsed the alien girl's armor with water. He described the girl's strange reaction and the way she had fled after asking if he knew what it meant. As Jake talked, Dr. Collins's eyes grew wider. When he finished his story, she sat back in her chair and let out a long breath. "Oh my," she said quietly. "Jake, do you know the name of the Velthari girl you helped?" "No, she didn't tell me her name. She just ran away after I rinsed her armor." "Doctor." Collins turned to her computer and typed quickly. "Can you describe her? What did her armor look like?" Jake described the silver blue skin, the glowing eyes, and the armor that seemed almost alive. He mentioned that the armor on her chest had looked different from the rest, thinner somehow. "I think I know who you're talking about," Dr. Collins said, looking at something on her screen. "Her name is Zara. She's here as a cultural ambassador from the Velthari homeworld." "Okay, but what did I do wrong? Why did she react like that?" Dr. Collins closed her computer and leaned forward. "Jake, among the Velthari, armor isn't just protection. It's part of their body, their identity, their very soul. They bond with their armor when they're young, and it grows with them throughout their lives." "I see," Jake said, though he didn't really understand why that would make rinsing it so important. "But that's not the biggest issue," Dr. Collins continued. "The act of one person rinsing another person's armor has a very specific meaning in Velthari culture. It's called Kethmirin, which translates roughly to cleansing of souls." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "What does that mean?" "Exactly? It's a bonding ritual, Jake. When someone rinses another person's armor, they're declaring their intention to become that person's life partner. It's similar to a marriage proposal in human culture, but even more serious. The Velthari believe that by cleaning someone's armor, you're offering to share their burdens, protect them with your life, and become part of their family." Jake's mouth fell open. "You're joking." "I'm afraid not. This is one of the most sacred rituals in Velthari society. It's not something that can be undone or taken back once it's been performed." Jake stood up and started pacing around the small office. "But I didn't know. I was just trying to help her. I was washing off cleaning chemicals that were dissolving her armor." "I believe you," Dr. Collins said gently. "But unfortunately, intent doesn't matter in Velthari law. The action itself is what counts. By rinsing her armor, you have officially declared your intention to bond with Zara. What happens now? Can I explain that it was an accident?" Dr. Collins looked uncomfortable. "That's where things get complicated. In Velthari culture, refusing the bond after performing the ritual is considered one of the worst insults possible. It would bring shame not just to Zara, but to her entire family. It could even lead to blood feuds that last for generations." Jake stopped pacing and stared at Dr. Collins. "Are you saying I have to marry this alien girl?" "Not marry in the human sense," Dr. Collins explained. "The Velthari bond is different from human marriage. It's about protection, honor, and shared responsibility. But yes, if you refuse the bond, it could have serious consequences for both you and Zara." "What kind of consequences?" "For Zara, it would mean disgrace and exile from her people. For you, and potentially for all humans on this station, it could mean the end of our relationship with the Velthari. They might refuse to trade with us or share their technology. Some of their more traditional leaders might even consider it an act of war." Jake sat back down heavily. "This is insane. I'm just a maintenance worker. I clean floors and fix broken pipes. I can't be responsible for human-alien relations." Dr. Collins reached across her desk and touched Jake's hand. "I know this is overwhelming. Let me make some calls and see what our options are. Maybe there's a way to explain the situation that won't cause a diplomatic incident." "Have you talked to Zara about this?" "Not yet, but I should probably reach out to her soon. She's likely just as confused and upset as you are." Jake thought about the alien girl's expression when she had looked at him. She didn't seem upset. She seemed I don't know. Surprised, maybe? Or shocked. That makes sense. For a Velthari, having someone perform the Kethmiran ritual is a huge honor. Even if it was an accident, part of her probably feels honored that someone was willing to bond with her. But I don't even know her. That doesn't matter to the Velthari. They believe that bonds formed through action are stronger than bonds formed through emotion. In their culture, you learn to love someone after you commit to protecting them. Not before. Jake put his head in his hands. What am I supposed to do, Dr. Collins? I can't just ignore this and pretend it didn't happen. No, you can't, but you have choices. You can accept the bond and learn what it means to be Zara's partner according to Velthari law. Or we can try to find a diplomatic solution that satisfies their honor code without requiring you to give up your entire life. What would accepting the bond mean? You would be expected to protect Zara with your life. You would become part of her family and clan. You would need to learn Velthari customs and laws. And you would be bound to her until one of you dies. Jake was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything Dr. Collins had told him. Finally, he looked up at her. I need to talk to Zara, he said, before any diplomats or officials get involved. I need to understand how she feels about all this. Dr. Collins nodded. That's probably wise. I can help you arrange a meeting with her. But Jake, be careful what you say. Every word matters when you're dealing with Velthari honor. Jake stood up to leave. Dr. Collins? What happens if I just refuse? What if I say, I won't accept the bond no matter what the consequences are? Dr. Collins looked sad. Then a young, alien girl who has done nothing wrong will suffer for your mistake. And humanity will lose one of its most important allies in this part of the galaxy. Jake nodded and walked toward the door. He had a lot to think about before he talked to Zara. Jake spent the next day thinking about his conversation with Dr. Collins. He tried to do his regular work, but he kept making mistakes. He spilled cleaning solution on the floor, forgot to lock his supply cart, and nearly walked into a maintenance robot because he wasn't paying attention. Every time he saw a Velthari on the station, his heart started beating faster. He wondered if they knew what had happened. Did they all think he was engaged to Zara now? Were they angry with him for performing their sacred ritual by accident? By the end of his shift, Jake had made up his mind. He needed to find Zara and talk to her face to face. Dr. Collins had offered to arrange a formal meeting, but Jake thought that would make things worse. This was personal, and it needed to be handled personally. Jake asked around and learned that Zara often spent her free time in the observation deck on level 12. The observation deck was a large room with windows that looked out into space. People went there to relax and think while watching the stars. Jake took the elevator up to level 12 and walked slowly toward the observation deck. His hands were sweating, and he kept practicing what he wanted to say. He planned to apologize for the accident and ask Zara what she thought they should do. He found her sitting alone near the largest window. She was looking out at the blue star at New Horizon orbited. Her damaged armor had been repaired, but Jake could see the spots where it looked different from the rest. She seemed smaller somehow, less impressive than she had in the hallway. The night before, Jake took a deep breath and walked over to her. Excuse me, he said quietly. Zara, my name is Jake Morrison. I'm the one who ... I know who you are, Zara said without turning around. Her voice was the same musical tone he remembered, but it sounded tired. You are the human who performed Kethmiran with me. Jake sat down in a chair near her, but not too close. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. I wanted to apologize. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to help when that cleaning solution hit your armor. Zara finally turned to look at him. Her glowing eyes studied his face carefully. You want to apologize for honoring me? I want to apologize for confusing you, for putting you in a difficult position. I know this ritual is important to your people, and I didn't mean to ... Stop, Zara said, holding up her hand. You do not understand. Let me explain something to you, Jake Morrison. Jake closed his mouth and waited for her to continue. Among my people, I am considered broken, Zara said, looking back out at the stars. When Velthari children reach the age of bonding, we are given our armor. The armor grows with us and becomes part of our body and spirit. But my armor never bonded properly. She touched the repaired spots on her chest. I have a genetic condition that prevented the armor from integrating with my body. The armor you saw dissolving was not real Velthari armor. It was a synthetic replacement that allows me to function in society, but everyone knows it is fake. Jake didn't know what to say. He had assumed all Velthari were the same, but clearly he was wrong. Because my armor is not real, I cannot be a warrior like other Velthari. I cannot serve in our military or hold positions of honor in our society. I was sent here as a cultural ambassador because it was the only job my family could find for. Me, that wouldn't bring them shame. That doesn't sound fair, Jake said. Zara smiled, but it was a sad smile. Fairness is not the same for all species, Jake Morrison. In Velthari culture, your armor defines who you are. Without real armor, I am nobody. But you're here, representing your entire species. That seems pretty important to me. I am here because no one else wanted the job. Dealing with aliens is considered beneath most Velthari warriors. Jake felt angry on Zara's behalf. So they sent you away because you're different? That's terrible. It is the way things are, Zara said with a shrug. But now you have performed Kethmiran with me. Do you know what that means for someone like me? Jake shook his head. It means that for the first time in my life, someone has declared that I am worthy of protection and partnership. Even though I know it was an accident, even though you did not mean to honor me, you are the first person who has ever performed this ritual for me. Jake began to understand why Zara had looked so shocked in the hallway. Have other Velthari ever? I mean, has anyone else ever wanted to bond with you? No, my condition makes me undesirable as a partner. Most Velthari would rather remain alone than bond with someone whose armor is fake. They sat in silence for a while, both looking out at the stars. Jake thought about what Zara had told him. She had been sent away from her home because she was different, and now he had accidentally given her something she had never expected to have. Zara, Jake said finally, what happens if I refuse the bond? What happens to you? Officially, I would be dishonored and exiled from Velthari society. My family would lose status, and I would never be allowed to return home. And unofficially? Zara turned to look at him again. Unofficially, I would be free to make my own choices for the first time in my life. I could stay here on the station, or travel to other worlds, or do whatever I wanted without worrying about Velthari customs. Jake was surprised. You would want that? To be cut off from your people? I am already cut off from my people, Jake Morrison. The only difference would be that it would become official instead of hidden. But Dr. Collins said that refusing the bond could cause problems between humans and Velthari. She said it might even lead to war. Zara laughed, and the sound was like music. Dr. Collins knows much about Velthari culture, but she does not know everything. The traditional leaders might make angry speeches, but they will not go to war over someone like me. I am not important enough. Jake felt relieved, but also confused. So I can refuse the bond without causing a diplomatic incident. You can refuse it, Zara said. But first, let me ask you something. Do you understand what accepting the bond would mean? Dr. Collins explained some of it. I would have to protect you and learn your customs. We would be partners for life. That is correct, but incomplete. Kathmiran is not about romance or marriage as humans understand it. It is about becoming family. When two Velthari bond, they become responsible for each other's honor, safety, and happiness. They share everything, including their burdens and their successes. Like having a brother or sister, more than that. Like being two parts of the same person. Your victories become my victories. My failures become your failures. We face the universe together instead of alone. Jake thought about this. He had always been alone, even when he was around other people. His job was solitary, his life was simple, and he had never had anyone who truly depended on him. What would happen to your position here if I accepted the bond? Jake asked. I would remain as a cultural ambassador, but with much higher status. Having a bonded partner, even a human one, would prove that I am worthy of respect. It would change everything for me. And what would happen to my life? You would continue your work, but you would also learn to be Velthari. You would study our language, our customs, and our way of thinking. In time, you might even be given Velthari armor of your own. Jake looked at Zara's repaired armor, remembering how it had seemed to move and shift like it was alive. Is that possible? Can humans wear Velthari armor? It has never been tried, Zara admitted. But if our bond is real, if you truly commit to becoming my partner, then perhaps the armor would accept you. Perhaps you would be the first human to truly understand what it means to be Velthari. They talked for another hour, and Jake learned more about Velthari culture than he had ever imagined. He learned about their focus on honor and duty, their belief in chosen family, and their idea that actions matter more than words or feelings. As the conversation continued, Jake realized that he liked Zara. She was intelligent, brave, and honest. About her struggles, she didn't feel sorry for herself, even though her life had been difficult. She had found ways to contribute to her society despite being treated as an outcast. When it was time for Jake to return to work, he stood up and looked down at Zara. I need more time to think about this, he said. Of course, Zara replied. This is not a decision to make quickly. Can I ask you one more question? Yes. If I accept the bond, would you want me to? Not because of obligation or honor, but because you actually want me as your partner? Zara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. Jake Morrison, you are the first person who has ever treated me like I matter. You risked yourself to help me when you thought I was in danger. You came here to apologize, even though you had done nothing wrong. Yes, I would want you as my partner. Jake nodded and walked away, leaving Zara alone with the stars. He had a big decision to make. Word about Jake's situation spread quickly through the human sections of the station. Within 2 days, everyone seemed to know about the accidental bonding ritual. People looked at Jake differently now, some with curiosity and others with concern. Captain Lisa Park called Jake to her office on the 3rd day. Captain Park was a stern woman who had been in charge of New Horizon since it was built. She sat behind a large desk covered with reports and data tablets. Sit down, Norrison, she said without looking up from her paperwork. We need to discuss your situation with the Velthari ambassador. Jake sat in the uncomfortable metal chair across from her desk. Yes, ma'am. Captain Park finally looked at him. I've been getting reports from the diplomatic team about this bonding ritual business. Chief Diplomat Ron Hayes tells me that you're considering accepting this alien bond. Is that true? I'm still thinking about it, Captain. Well, let me help you think faster, Captain Park said, leaning forward. New Horizon is humanity's first permanent foothold in this part of the galaxy. We're here to establish trade relationships, gather scientific knowledge, and prove that humans can work peacefully with alien species. Your personal choices could affect all of that. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I understand the situation is complicated, ma'am. Complicated doesn't begin to describe it. Chief Hayes has been in contact with Velthari leadership on their homeworld. They're sending a High Council representative to the station to deal with this situation personally. That means they consider this a serious matter. Zara told me that the Velthari leadership wouldn't care much about her because of her condition. Captain. Park snorted. Morrison, you're thinking like a human. Yes, this Zara individual might not be important to them personally, but the precedents you set here could affect how the Velthari view all future human interactions. If they think we don't take their customs seriously, it could damage our relationship with them permanently. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had never wanted to be important or make decisions that affected other people. He just wanted to do his job and live quietly. What do you think I should do, Captain? I think you should listen to the diplomatic team and find a way out of this bond that doesn't insult the aliens. Chief Hayes has some ideas about cultural exemptions we might be able to use. That afternoon, Jake met with Chief Diplomat Ron Hayes and his team. Hayes was a tall, thin man who spoke in careful, measured sentences. He had been working with alien species for over 10 years and considered himself an expert on interspecies relations. Jake, Hayes said, gesturing for him to sit at a conference table surrounded by diplomatic staff. I've been researching Velthari, law and customs, looking for a way to resolve this situation without requiring you to commit your entire life to an alien bond. What did you find? There are several precedents for dissolving bonds under special circumstances. For example, if the bonding was performed under duress, or if one of the participants was mentally incompetent, or if the ritual was incomplete in some way. One of Hayes's assistants, a young woman named Kate, spoke up. We think we can argue that the bonding was incomplete because you didn't understand the significance of your actions. Velthari law requires both participants to knowingly consent to the bond, but I did rinse her armor, Jake said. The action was completed even if I didn't understand what it meant. That's where it gets tricky, Hayes admitted. The Velthari focus on actions rather than intentions, but there are some exceptions for cross-cultural misunderstandings. We think we can build a case. Jake listened as the diplomatic team explained their plan. They would argue that the bond was invalid because Jake hadn't received proper cultural education before interacting with Velthari citizens. They would propose new protocols to prevent similar accidents in the future. What does Zara think about this plan? Jake asked. Hayes looked uncomfortable. We haven't discussed it with her yet. We wanted to get your approval first. Don't you? Think she should have a say in this? It's her bond, too. Of course she'll be consulted, Hayes said quickly. But ultimately, this is about protecting human interests on the station. We can't let one accidental interaction derail years of careful diplomatic work. Jake left the meeting feeling worse than before. The diplomatic team's plan made sense from a practical standpoint, but it felt wrong somehow. They were treating Zara like a problem to be solved, rather than a person with her own feelings and opinions. Over the next few days, Jake found himself spending more time learning about Velthari culture. He read reports, watched educational videos, and even started learning basic words in their language. The more he learned, the more he realized how little he had understood about Zara's people. The Velthari had a complex society built around concepts of honor, duty, and mutual protection. Families were not just blood relatives, but chosen groups of people who committed to supporting each other through life's challenges. Their armor was not just protective gear, but a symbol of their identity and their place in society. Jake also learned about the Kethmiran bonding ritual in detail. It was not just about marriage or partnership, but about creating a permanent link between two souls. Bonded Velthari shared their successes and failures, their joys and sorrows. They became responsible for each other in ways that humans rarely. Experience taught the more Jake learned, the more he understood why Zara had been so affected by his accidental performance of the ritual. For someone who had been treated as an outcast her entire life, having someone offer to share her burdens and stand by her side must have felt like a miracle. On the fourth day after his meeting with the diplomatic team, Jake was working in the maintenance bay when Dr. Collins found him. "Jake," she said, looking worried, "I need to talk to you about something important." They went to her office, and Dr. Collins closed the door behind them. "The Velthari High Council representative arrived this morning," she said. "His name is Elder Corvin, and he's demanding to meet with you immediately." "What does he want?" "He wants to determine whether the bond between you and Zara is valid according to Velthari law. If he decides it is valid, you'll be expected to formally accept it or face serious consequences." Jake felt his stomach drop. "What kind of consequences?" "Economic sanctions against the station, restrictions on human travel in Velthari space, and possibly the end of our trade agreements. Elder Corvin has the authority to make these decisions on behalf of his government. And if I accept the bond, then you'll be bound by Velthari law for the rest of your life. You'll have to follow their customs, protect Zara with your life, and become a member of her clan. It's not something you can undo later if you change your mind." Jake sat quietly for a moment, thinking about everything he had learned. "Dr. Collins, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. If you were in my position, what would you do?" Dr. Collins smiled sadly. "That's not a fair question, Jake. I'm not in your position, and I can't make this choice for you. But I will say this. I've been studying alien cultures for 15 years, and I've never seen a species that values loyalty and commitment the way the Velthari do. If you accept this bond, you'll be gaining something that most humans never experience. And if I refuse it, then you'll be free to live your own life the way you always have. But Zara will pay the price for your freedom." That evening, Jake went back to the observation deck to think. He wasn't surprised to find Zara there, sitting in the same spot where they had talked before. "I heard that Elder Corvin wants to meet with me tomorrow," Jake said, sitting down beside her. "Yes, he will determine the validity of our bond and decide what consequences you will face if you refuse it. Are you nervous?" Zara looked at him with her glowing eyes. "I am terrified," she said honestly. "Not of what will happen to me, but of what will happen to you. You did not ask for any of this, Jake Morrison. You were simply trying to help someone in need." "I've been learning about your people," Jake said, "about your customs and your beliefs. I think I'm starting to understand why the bonding ritual is so important." "What do you understand?" "That it's not really about two people getting married. It's about choosing to face the universe together instead of alone. It's about saying that someone else's well-being is as important as your own." Zara nodded. "That is correct. I've been alone my whole life," Jake continued. "I've never had anyone who really depended on me, and I've never depended on anyone else. Part of me wonders what it would be like to have that kind of connection with another person. And part of you is afraid of the responsibility." "Yes," Jake admitted. "I'm just a maintenance worker, Zara. I fix broken pipes and clean floors. I don't know how to protect someone or share their burdens. I don't know how to be worthy of the kind of trust your people put in their bonded partners." Zara turned to face him fully. "Jake Morrison, do you know what you did when you saw my armor dissolving? I tried to help. You risked your own safety to protect a stranger. You didn't think about consequences or cultural protocols. You saw someone in danger, and you acted to save them. That is exactly what a bonded partner should do." Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about his choice. Tomorrow he would meet with Elder Corvin and make a decision that would change his life forever. Either he would accept the bond. The meeting with Elder Corvin was held in the station's main conference room. Jake had never been in such an important gathering before. Representatives from multiple alien species sat around a large oval table, all watching to see how this unusual situation would be resolved. Elder Corvin was an impressive figure. He was taller than other Velthari, with silver-white skin that seemed to glow with inner light. His armor was ancient and beautiful, covered in patterns that told the story of his clan's history. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had made important decisions for centuries. "Jake Morrison," Elder Corvin said, studying Jake with piercing blue eyes. "You stand accused of performing the sacred ritual of Kethmiring with Ambassador Zara without understanding its meaning or significance. How do you respond to this charge?" Jake stood up from his chair. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "Elder Corvin, I accept responsibility for my actions. I did rinse Ambassador Zara's armor, and I did not understand what that meant in your culture. But I want you to know that I was trying to help her, not harm her." "Your intentions are noted," Elder Corvin replied. "But intentions do not change the fact that you have performed this sacred ritual. According to Velthari law, you must either accept the bond or face the consequences of refusing it." Chief Diplomat Hayes stood up at this point. "Elder Corvin, if I may speak on behalf of the human government, we believe this situation arose from a cultural misunderstanding that could have been prevented with better education protocols. We propose ... Silence, Elder Corvin said firmly. "This matter concerns only Jake Morrison and Ambassador Zara. No one else may speak for them." Hayes sat down, looking frustrated. Captain Park and the other human officials watched nervously from their seats. Elder Corvin turned to Zara, who was sitting at the far end of the table. "Ambassador Zara, you have been dishonored by the accidental nature of this bonding. Do you wish to release Jake Morrison from his obligation and accept exile from our society?" Zara stood up gracefully. "Elder Corvin, I do not consider myself dishonored. Jake Morrison acted to protect me when he thought I was in danger. That is exactly what a true bonded partner should do. But he acted without knowledge of our customs. He acted with kindness and courage. Are those not the qualities we value most in our bonded partners?" Elder Corvin considered this for a moment. "You raise an interesting point, Ambassador. But the law is clear. The ritual was performed, and now it must be either accepted or rejected." Jake looked around the room at all the people watching him. He thought about the diplomatic team's plan to find a legal loophole. He thought about Captain Park's concerns about human-alien relations. He thought about his quiet, simple life and how accepting this bond would change everything. Then he looked at Zara, who was watching him with hope and fear in her glowing eyes. Jake stood up again and walked to the center of the room. "Elder Corvin, I have something to say. Speak. Over the past week, I've learned a lot about Velthari culture. I've learned about honor, duty, and the importance of chosen family. I've also learned about Ambassador Zara and the challenges she has faced because of her condition." Jake turned to look at Zara. "Zara has been treated as less than worthy by some of your people because her armor is different. But in the time I've known her, I've seen her strength, her intelligence, and her dedication to building bridges between our species. She has never asked for pity or special treatment. She has simply tried to serve her people and mine with honor." He turned back to Elder Corvin. "I want to accept the bond with Ambassador Zara, not because law requires it, and not because diplomats think it's the best solution. I want to accept it because I choose to." A murmur went through the room. Elder Corvin raised his hand for silence. "You understand what this means, Jake Morrison? You will be bound to protect Ambassador Zara with your life. You will become part of her clan and subject to Velthari law. You will share her burdens and her honors for as long as you both live. I understand, Jake said firmly, but I want to add something to the traditional bond. Elder Corvin's eyes narrowed. Explain. In human culture, we believe that the strongest bonds are made through choice, not obligation. I want our bond to be based on mutual respect and shared purpose, not just ancient law. I want Zara to choose me just as I am choosing her. Jake walked over to Zara and held out his hand. Zara, will you accept me as your bonded partner? Not because ritual demands it, but because you want to face the universe together with me? Zara looked at Jake's outstretched hand, then at Elder Corvin, and back at Jake. Tears were forming in her glowing eyes. Yes, she said quietly, taking his hand. I choose to bond with you, Jake Morrison. Elder Corvin watched this exchange with great interest. This is highly irregular, he said. The Kefmiran ritual has never been modified in this way. Maybe it's time for something new, Jake said, still holding Zara's hand. Your people and mine are going to be working together for a long time. Maybe we can learn from each other and create new traditions that honor both of our cultures. Elder Corvin was quiet for a long moment. The entire room waited to hear his decision. Very well, he said finally. I accept this modified bond, but there will be conditions. What conditions? Jake asked. You must prove your commitment through action, not just words. You will undergo traditional Velthari training to learn our ways. You will study our language, our customs, and our philosophy. If you can complete this training and show that you truly understand what it means to be Velthari, then your bond will be recognized as valid. How long will this training take? 1 full cycle of our home star, approximately 18 months of your time. During this period, you will live according to Velthari customs and laws. Ambassador Zara will be your teacher and guide. Jake looked at Zara, who nodded encouragingly. I accept your conditions, Elder Corvin. Then let the bonding ceremony begin. What followed was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. Elder Corvin performed an ancient ritual that involves chanting in the Velthari language and symbolic gestures that represented the joining of two souls. Jake didn't understand all the words, but he felt the weight and importance of what was happening. When it was time for Jake to make his vows, he spoke from his heart. I promise to stand with Zara through whatever challenges we face. I promise to protect her, not just with my life, but with my friendship, my loyalty, and my respect. I promise to learn her culture and honor her people while staying true to my own humanity. Zara's vows were equally moving. I promise to guide Jake in the ways of my people while learning from his human wisdom. I promise to share my burdens with him and help him carry his own. I promise to be worthy of the choice he has made. Elder Corvin concluded the ceremony by presenting Jake with a simple piece of Velthari armor, a chest plate that would serve as a symbol of his new status. This armor is temporary, he explained. If you complete your training successfully, you will be given proper armor that bonds with your body. As the ceremony ended and the various diplomats and officials began to leave, Jake and Zara found themselves alone for a moment. Are you sure about this? Zara asked quietly. You're giving up your old life for something completely unknown. Jake smiled at her. I've been thinking about that. My old life was safe and predictable, but it was also empty. I went to work, did my job, and went home to an empty room every day. I had no one who counted on me and no one I could count on. And now? Now I have a partner who needs me and who I can depend on. I have a chance to learn about a completely different way of life. I have purpose beyond just fixing broken pipes. Zara squeezed his hand. It won't be easy. Velthari training is difficult, and some of my people will not accept you easily. I know. But we'll face those challenges together, right? That's what bonded partners do. Yes, Zara said with a smile that seemed to light up her entire face. That is exactly what bonded partners do. 6 months later, Jake was working alongside Zara in the station's new cultural exchange center. His Velthari language skills had improved dramatically, and he was beginning to understand the complex honor codes that governed Velthari society. The chest plate Elder Corvin had given him had started to change, adapting to his body in small ways that suggested it might eventually become true bonded armor. More importantly, Jake and Zara had become a team in every sense of the word. They worked together to solve diplomatic problems, helped other humans and aliens understand each other's cultures, and faced each challenge as a united front. The station's human population had initially been skeptical of Jake's choice, but they gradually came to respect the partnership he and Zara had built. Their success in resolving conflicts between different species proved that human flexibility and Velthari honor could work together to create something stronger than either could achieve alone. As Jake watched Zara explaining human customs to a group of young Velthari visitors, he reflected on how much his life had changed. He was no longer just a maintenance worker who cleaned floors and fixed pipes. He was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of what was possible when different species chose to understand and support each other. The broken pipe that had started this entire journey had been repaired long ago, but the bond it had accidentally created